Welcome, Game of Thrones fans. I am Brandon Jones, and this is Game Trailers of Thrones, our Game of Thrones podcast, Episode 3, based on Episode 3. What was it called?
The Walk of Punishment.
The Walk of Punishment. On my left is Jeremy Hoffman,
Hello.
producer of GGTV, and on my right is Chris Wynn, who's one of our editors at large. And
Formerly known as the camera guy.
right, exactly. You might have seen grumbling behind the camera. My wife, unfortunately, couldn't be here this week. She is working today, and Ryan Stevens is again out quarantined into his office because he is sick. So we're going to get started with just what did you think of the show, Mr. Hoffman?
I liked it. There's a couple big moments that we've been waiting for, and I think we've finally met everyone that we need to meet this season in terms of like main characters that we've been waiting for. So overall, a good episode. I think we're ready for things to start happening now. They've taken 3 episodes to lay the land for this season, and things are happening.
Momentum, man. The ball's rolling. A lot of things are gaining their momentum. I mean, I've read book 3, so I see all the things getting ready to happen. I'm just really excited, especially for I have a feeling I know what's gonna happen next episode, what's set up. So I thought it was a really great episode.
And just
overall.
to set the scene, you have read book 3, but you have not read past book 3.
Haven't touched 4, and obviously not 5. Right. But yeah, I'm caught up.
So
I know the bombshells, but
for his sake. And our dear friend Anton is filling in behind the camera, who had watched part of season 1, and that was about it. So we're going to try to keep it as unspoilery, or maybe he'll plug his ears for that section. But let's get into scene by scene.
Yeah, let's just go through a quick recap. I'd say there was really.
Shirt, by the way. That's great.
Thank you. That's how I feel. That's how we all feel. There's, let's start, open up with Kat. We see the Blackfish, who is her uncle, who in the books was the main character from season 1. Him and Holster Tully had some sort of issue years back, and that he was the black sheep, aka Blackfish of the family. And we also get introduced to her brother, Edmure, who, as we all see, is kind of an idiot. So, can't do anything right, can't listen to Robb. I've been the one complaining, I think, the most about Robb being a terrible leader on the show, and a terrible, just that can't lay out a plan that works well. And last night he proved me wrong.
And hopefully helps with his poor marriage choices, and he's obviously going to get in trouble because of that. But kind of shows that he's in between a rock and a hard place, and has to make some tough decisions, and has to deal with stupid people like that who make hasty decisions. So
well, I mean, it was a big scene. I mean, you got to follow kind of like Edmure's thoughts when he was kept calling him nephew, right? It's this is just my cousin, my nephew. He's not my king. I don't have to listen to him. And I think Robb was like, no. Hold on. There's a title here, and you shut the fuck up and you do what I say. And I was like, okay, finally Robb's getting it together. I'm going to jump through some of the shorter scenes.
Sure. I think this will probably be a shorter episode just because, I also dug the episode, but episode went by really fast for me because I wasn't really picking things apart. I was just enjoying it, I think, most of the time.
Talisa stories about Robb, that was good, and I think it shows a nice little relationship between them. And also, in the books, we only heard stories about Robb, so it's kind of, I think, a book nod where it's those are the same stories we were hearing, and now they're hearing them.
And we haven't seen, she introduced herself as a nurse, which Jane Westerling was not a nurse, so she didn't have to, fill that role. So it's nice to see her doing her job, so she's not always just kind of hanging around Robb and making him unfocused on his duties.
Stannis, Melisandre just fucks with his head.
Right.
She has so much power over him that he won't admit. The fact that he was begging her to stay, that's not the Stannis we were introduced to in season 2. Sure. That is not, he doesn't beg someone to stay, he commands.
And we can get into differences later, but I don't remember him getting that hot and heavy in the book.
I don't either, not in the book. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember her leaving him, but maybe her going on a little voyage for a time and him, I don't remember that at all. I was like, oh, there's a book difference, but maybe, I'm curious where they're going to go with that.
Yeah, I think it lends to the fact, they allude to them sleeping together in the book.
Sure, of course.
And so I think, we also haven't seen his wife. I don't want to get into book differences, but there's nothing standing in his way like there is in the books. So,
or his daughter,
yep. So I think that's an interesting kind of just change character for him, shows how attached really he is to her, and even he doesn't really trust her.
Right.
Trying to think. Arya, Gendry, and Hot Pie. They're still.
Speaking of.
I did my tribute to Hot Pie this week and made little pies because he's gone. As much as I'd like to believe that I'd be like the Tyrion in Game of Thrones, I'd definitely be the Hot Pie, the dude at the end just baking bread all day. So
Well,
I acknowledge that.
I mean, you have to think, like, what would you do? What, if you just woke up tomorrow and you were in Westeros, like, where would you go? What would you do with the rest of your life? Like, how would you find happiness in that land? Like, I think it's really hard. And so I think he probably is going to end up better than anybody.
Well, he's like, I don't have to walk around and I get to bake bread. I'm in. Key thing from that scene that I think some people may not have picked up on, and I could be wrong, but I just wanted to pick your guys' brain. When Arya approaches the Hound, she says, "Do you remember the last time we were here?" And that's when she killed Micah, right? Or that's when he killed Micah in season 1.
Sure. Okay.
So that's where the whole scene went down.
That's her obvious beef. That's why she mentions his name when she goes to bed at night.
Yeah.
Like,
but that was that scene
Yeah,
because they don't really acknowledge
that
it.
was the place, but they called it an inn this time.
Well, it's the Inn of the Crossroads in the books.
Oh yeah, I thought it was
That's-
like some sort of like
that's-
actual holdfast.
No, I believe that's because I think that's the same inn that like Cat captures Tyrion in the same inn. Yeah, it's that inn takes place kind of multiple times.
Because remember how they said they go like back to kind of like the little mini trial with Arya and Joffrey and the dog biting and everything. That they said that was kind of like we're using your
Holdfast,
dinner,
but
your
I
dinner
think
room.
that was. Yeah, I think that was the inn nearest to that Holdfast. That's where the commoners were out at
I
that
see, I see.
inn.
I mean, I definitely recognize the building, and they definitely specifically use the same shots from season 1 to kind of give you the idea that yes, this is that same place. And for those that don't pick it up, here's a line from Arya saying, "Remember this place," you know. But yeah, and that's also where Sansa's direwolf lady died.
So lots of key
kind of
scenes take place there. So it's nice to see that continuing to play a major role. Let's hop north real quick. Right. Jon is discovered that possibly all of his brothers are dead. Right. And brothers meaning Night's Watch, not his actual brothers. So they're on the attack. Mance Rayder feel it's like the crows are decimated and it's time to go on the offensive. Not much happened there, but that's going to play bigger scenes later, which is nice to see that that's moving along a little bit quicker than I think previously thought. Sure. And I'd like to see Jon away from Mance, where he gets into it with the wildlings, because it seems like right now he's got a little bit of a protector, and they're going to go on the offensive, which should be good.
Coming off of the idea of brothers dying, like the whole idea of Bran and Rickon being dead, to those who aren't aware of the truth, obviously. In the books, they really made it a point that everybody pretty much confirmed that they're dead. Right. Whereas in the show, it's interesting that they're saying we don't know that they're dead, they could be alive. The aura, the idea that they could still be alive is much different tone than in the books.
I mean, that was the Blackfish, and he was pretty much telling Cat, whatever Robb believes, you have to believe, and that family is connected by their wolves. So I think if Robb deep down feels like his brothers are alive, I think there's more to it than a feeling. It's a little bit of magic. I think a little bit of that northern magic.
I think you feel the magic a little more from the show than you do from the books.
Right.
Because you kind of have to pull that out yourself, what you believe in. So
I think that was a little bit of nod to their connection. Sorry, Sam and.
Right. I was just going to further that point. You had Bran, dreaming about Eddard in the first season.
Right.
So he certainly felt that. So I think Robb would, did he tell Robb that, or would Robb have gotten that information that Bran kind of felt that happening or saw that coming?
Yeah, and I think
maybe
they
he's
know.
thinking I don't have a feeling, so I think I would have if that had happened. I would have known.
There's definitely a connection with the North. So other northern characters, we've got Sam and the rest of the Crows. They're back at Croster's Holdfast. Right. Creepy Holdfast, and Jilly has had her baby, and it's a boy, which in the show means it's time for a sacrifice. And there's a lot of tension in that scene last night. I think Craster was smart to feed them, because once you've had, you fed your guest, they are supposed to treat you with honor. And even though there's a little bit of tension between those guys, I think there's more to come. And it's just, that guy's such a dick. He's such a creepo. So it's nice to see.
And I like how he's a huge guy and he's making fun of Sam for being fat. Yeah, I think there's also a great juxtaposition of when you first saw them arrive at Craster's Keep, all the brothers, coming in, and like it's tough. I hear a lot of people complain about just the general size of things that they're like, well, in the book, I remember that being so much bigger than that, and like they're doing the best they can. I mean, it's not just an army they have to produce; it's like 8 different armies, and so I thought it was a nice visual representation of like how tired they were, how much men they'd lost, what
Well,
they'd
they
been
all
through.
fit inside now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just
He doesn't have to find other places
sergeants
for them
or
to
the
sleep.
the leaders. It's everyone fits inside now, which is just shows how small that is. So the big scenes in last night's episode, this is really I've really been working up to. That small council meeting, I think I watched that scene 6, 7, 8 times.
And also example of pace. We were talking about the last episode where they would have never taken that much time with a scene like
3
that.
minutes of
last
no
season.
talking
Yeah.
and just looking at each other. So good. Some key things that you watch. Littlefinger's the one that takes that first seat. Definitely is kissing a little bit of ass, and Varys gives him that look like, great. There's this perfect little eye roll, and then the Maester takes the third seat, and you've got just Tyrion standing there waiting to figure out what's going on. And when Cersei comes in, she grabs the seat, sits right next to her father, which is obviously where she thinks she belongs, the hand of the hand, and Tyrion's like, nope, I'm just going to look him right in the eye. And then Tyrion says the first word in the scene, which also kind of shows how everyone else was terrified to say anything. And Tyrion's just a log. Like, he knows his father doesn't respect him. There's no reason to fight for that respect anymore. And he's like,
yeah. And a lot of times he doesn't really have a control of like letting words get out.
Yep.
Like a lot of times in the books, he's like, "Why did I say?"
Yeah.
He knows he's gonna get punched in the face. but
Was
he's like,
this
I have to say
meeting
this.
like coming off of the back of some sort of event that they were meeting for a purpose, or was it just like because I mean,
Well,
Tywin's been hand for a time now, right? Like, have they just is this their first official meeting as a solid group?
it looks like it.
Okay.
I think that's what it was supposed to be.
Okay.
So
It's probably Tyrion's return. Like he probably
Oh
hadn't
yeah,
been
yeah,
there
because
since he'd been out.
He's been out, yeah.
and they've been dealing with other things. So there's an interesting line. There's when Tywin says, "You have the most spies, like collectively more than anyone else." He's looking at the 3. So he knows that Littlefinger and the Maester also have spies, which I thought was interesting. It's not just Varys, the master, the spider, and Littlefinger also says an interesting line that titles bring titles. So he's rapidly moving up the ranks, and so are a few other characters like Bronn, and which is just kind of alludes to things that are coming in the future, where there's certain people that kind of claw their way to the top. I don't want to leave Tyrion yet. The scene with him and Littlefinger, transferring of power, learning Littlefinger's secrets, that was all good. But that scene with Pod was amazing. I know that it's not in the books. I know people are like, stay authentic. It's like, in the books, Tyrion never spends a lot of time reflecting on his relationship with Pod, his squire. And as he's in his sickbed, he's thinking about it a lot, and Pod's there protecting him. They never show that in the books or in the show, so I think that's a nice, just a nice nod to that.
Yeah,
and it's.
I think you also, that a lot of times in the book they give you examples of kind of appreciating what you have. Like, like obviously when we first get to, Winterfell, like things might be bad with the Stark family, but it's like, no, this is the best you will ever see anything like for these people. And so when he first gets Pod, he's really pissed off that like, oh, this is clearly a slight, that I've been stuck with this guy. But then you think about like the situation Jaime's in, the situation his sister's in, like he's probably the least stressed out of all of them, because he actually has somebody, he has Bronn who he can go to, when he can afford him, and he has this guy who's actually not just, in servitude to him, but, cares about him and it doesn't want him to be hurt. So yeah, let him sleep with some ladies. He deserves it.
It's just another way that he, it's like the looks on his face when he realized that it was for free, and him and Bronn grab the chairs and like huddle around him, and Pod's just smiling like he's in charge now out of that group, and he's earned some respect finally, because in the past, couple seasons it's all slight.
Do you have one scene left to talk about?
I have 2 scenes left.
Okay, well I was just gonna say also, if you notice the pace of the show, like that might seem really silly, but it brings it up to a level where you're like, haha, like, almost like sitcom-y, and then you get into, Jaime, and it's like, oh, Jaime's so funny, and he'll get out of this, like he's such a slick guy, I don't know, I think it sets a nice tone for that scene.
And they do a good job. One more just scene before we get to Jaime is Theon. So he escapes, he gets away. I'm still.
Yeah, but from what you said for last episode, if you watch the the spoiler section, I think you're right.
I think he's being set up.
Which they're really dragging out.
They're dragging that out, but also this is one of those not in the book things. So they're dragging this out. It's you have no idea.
I have no idea.
You have no idea what's
He's been
going
gone
on.
for a whole book. All book 3, he's not even mentioned. He's just MIA. I assumed he was dead, but nope, guess not. Yeah, my roommate Marco, he texted me and he was like, "How do you like that book 5 spoilers?" I was like, "Oh, really? Damn, book 5 is when they kind of reveal that he's not dead." Interesting.
But it works, which is really fun to think about, even if you are like a reader and somebody who's really followed the books, that like you can be surprised. Things will happen where you will you won't expect something.